Coming live from the studio, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for watching an episode of All Sports. This is your host, Gerardo. So today is the inaugural show of All Sports with Gerardo. So I already posted some videos about my background and who I am. So all you have to do is go back to my social media pages or my YouTube or Facebook page and look at those videos. They're the very first videos. I explain who I am, what the show's about, the purpose of the show, and what I want as an outcome of the show. But I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So I'm a big sports fan. I like all the hometown teams here in Colorado. I'm from the Denver area. I root for all these teams. I've been to many games. I watch them on TV or I attend the games all the time. I'm a big fan of the Broncos, the Rockies, the Nuggets. I watch other teams and individual players I also like outside of Colorado. So I'm just someone that likes sports. I like to always talk about sports. I'm always watching anything that has to do with sports on TV, or I'm reading about it online. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. It's something that I really like. I also played sports when I was younger. I usually just played basketball, but I did also play football or baseball with some friends. So sports is everything. It's always been a part of my life. So now I want to have the opportunity to talk about sports, give you the latest updates and news about sports, and give you my own opinion about different topics in sports. So whether you agree or disagree with me, you don't always have to agree about what I say, but I want to give my opinions and thoughts about what I think is going to happen. So I'm happy to start this show. I'm really looking forward to it. So let's hop right into it. So another thing I wanted to tell you is that I've been to a lot of baseball and football stadiums here in Colorado and outside of Colorado across the whole US. So for the next 30 months, at the middle of every month, starting in July, I'm going to tell you about an experience at a stadium, and I'm going to go in order from the very first one that I started until the very last one that I've been to. So of course, the first videos you're going to see is outside of Coors Field, being inside Coors Field, at Mile High Stadium, and at the Pepsi Center. And then after that, as the months go, I'm going to go in the order that I've been to all these baseball and football stadiums, starting with Seattle. And I'm going to go in order of every stadium I've been to throughout the year. So stay tuned into that. It's something that you should look forward to. I'm going to show you videos of the stadium, and if I don't have videos, or because I've already been to that stadium and I didn't do a video, I will at least talk to you about it. But the stadiums that I'm going to, or the stadiums I've been to, I have some videos from there, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, let's get right into the show. So today I'm going to talk about a few different things. I'm going to talk about the NBA Finals. I'm going to talk about the Stanley Cup Finals, and then I'll give you some updates in baseball, give you some current standings and any latest news, and then I'll get into all that, and depending on how much time, I might do another segment. If not, I'll do it next week. So let's begin. Starting off with the NBA Finals. For the fourth straight year in a row, it was the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So we all know that the first year the Warriors won, then the second year the Cavaliers won, last year the Warriors won, and then once again it was the Warriors and the Cavaliers again. I had a really good feeling that the Warriors were going to win. They just had the much better team. They have the superstars. They've had the talent. They've been there to be honest, I was really surprised that the Cavaliers made it to the finals, because out of both teams, I really did not expect the Cavaliers to get there. I expected the Warriors to get there, but they landed up both getting there. Both teams really had a tough playoff schedule throughout the playoffs. So at the beginning, when I was debating on who would come from the West and who would come from the East and who would even get into the finals, I really did not pick either the Warriors or the Cavaliers. My original pick was the Houston Rockets from the West and the Toronto Raptors from the East. I really thought that the finals was going to be between those two teams, which it landed up not being. Going to the East, I was really surprised how the Celtics made it to the conference finals. I was really surprised to see them there, because we all know that Gordon Hayward got injured the very first game of the year. He was out. Kyrie Irving got injured and he had to have a surgery, so he was going to be out the remainder of the season in the playoffs. He wouldn't come back until the following year. So they really had to rely on their young talent like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and just all the other players that they had. I really did not expect them to get out of the first round, but I was really surprised that they made it that far. The Toronto Raptors, I was a bit disappointed with them because they played really good throughout the season. They were even beating the Cavaliers, and somehow when they got to the second round, the Cavaliers swept them. Now looking at the Cavaliers, the way that the season started out for them, it was like, this team's not even going to make it into the playoffs. They don't have the talent. They don't have a chance. And when they got to the All-Star break, they really had to decide at the trade deadline, were they going to make some moves? Were they going to keep the team that they had? Because you could tell that there was tension with LeBron and the coach and some other players. So we knew that the first Cavaliers team was not going to have a chance at making the playoffs. So they landed up making some moves by moving Isaiah Thomas and Dwayne Wade. They landed up making a trade with the Lakers to bring Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance Jr. They also got some other guys. They traded off Isaiah Thomas to the Lakers. Dwayne Wade went back to the Miami Heat. So it really helped that after the All-Star break and after they had that time to relax, that the Cavaliers were going to bounce back. They really started playing good after the All-Star break. They were winning games. They had a better roster than what they had before the All-Star break. They still struggled and still had some games that they should have won, but they were playing much better. And then they were in the top 4 of the race of who was going to make it to the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. So I wasn't too surprised that they got into the playoffs. They still had talent. They had LeBron James. The thing that kind of hurt them a little bit was that Kevin Love got injured and he had to sit out a couple weeks, but they were still playing pretty decent basketball. They landed up making it into the playoffs, and for the Cavaliers, it almost looked like they were going to get eliminated in the first round. And you know that LeBron has never lost in the first round of the playoffs in any year that he's played. So that would have been the first time. The Pacers really gave the Cavaliers a challenge. They took them to Game 7. The Pacers did not have enough to win Game 7, but that was really close. It looked like, were the Pacers going to win? Were they going to beat the Cavaliers? They have a pretty young roster too. So they really did challenge them, but at the end of the day, when LeBron's in elimination games, it just seems like he plays his best basketball, and he did it that day, and they advanced to the next round. Then they landed up playing the Toronto Raptors. They actually swept the Raptors. I thought for sure that the Raptors would win some games because they were even beating the Cavaliers during the regular season, so I was surprised about that. Then when they played the Celtics in the conference finals, that went all the way to a Game 7. The Celtics really did challenge the Cavaliers, and at the end of the day, the Cavaliers won the series. They made it into the finals. And then going to the West, the Warriors were without Curry until the end of the first round. He came back in the second round of the playoffs. He was sitting out games towards the end of the regular season. So Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and a lot of the other players on the bench had to step up if they really wanted to make it into the playoffs, which they ended up making it into the playoffs as the second seed. Houston Rockets were on top of them. So the Warriors get in the playoffs, and yes, they did have some challenges. The Houston Rockets really did challenge the Warriors in the conference finals. That went all the way to the Game 7 as well. Chris Paul was injured throughout that series, and he had to sit out some of the games. So I believe with Curry coming back, that kind of gave the Warriors an advantage to win that series and make it into the finals for the fourth straight year in a row, which they did. The Western Conference Finals was really a good matchup. I really thought that the Houston Rockets would pull it off, but at the end of the day, the Warriors have had the experience. They've been to the finals the last 3 years. They found a way to win that series, so they made it into the finals once again for the fourth straight year. So once again, it was the Cavaliers and the Warriors. And going back to the playoffs, the Western Conference was really competitive. There were a lot of great teams in the playoffs. There were a lot of great playoff matches. So looking ahead to next year and in the following years, the Western Conference is going to be very competitive. There's a lot of teams that were in the playoffs that have potential of getting to the finals or advancing further than the first or the second round. So I'm really looking forward to that next year. And when we get to the NBA Finals now, it was the Warriors and the Cavaliers, Game 1. It was a very tight game, and the Cleveland Cavaliers were only down a few points, and J.R. Smith got the ball, and he didn't even know that the game was that close, so he was just dribbling the ball, and then he passed it to LeBron, not knowing that the game was that close. J.R. Smith could have took a shot and potentially got the game closer or tied the game, which he didn't. He just held on to the ball, so the game went into overtime, but then the Warriors just played better basketball, so they won that game. Game 1 and Game 3 were like the two games that the Cavaliers were really close. Those were the games that they could have won, especially Game 1. They could have won that game in Golden State. They didn't have to go to overtime. That was probably the only game that I thought that the Cavaliers had a chance of winning. When they got to Cleveland, it just looked like they knew that they were going to already lose the series. They were going to lose the finals. The Warriors, you could tell, were the better team. They already knew it, especially from experiences from the past NBA Finals. So it just looked like that they weren't even trying, because looking at the final scores, they were getting blown out those other games. So after Game 1 and after what happened, LeBron James didn't want to admit that it was J.R. Smith's fault. He wasn't really talking that much, and he was getting irritated by the type of questions he was being asked in the press conferences. So it just looked like that they gave up and just knew that they weren't going to win the finals. And I wasn't really surprised that the Warriors won. That was my pick. The Warriors had the better team, so I kind of knew that the Warriors were going to win the finals. They landed up sweeping the Cleveland Cavaliers, so I wasn't too surprised about that. So hopefully next season we'll see some different teams in the finals, or the Warriors might go back, of course, their favorite, the Rockets. We'll have to see what they're going to do in free agency. The Lakers could make some moves in free agency, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Moving on now to the Stanley Cup Finals. It was nice to see the Vegas Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup Finals. We all know that they were an expansion team. It was their first year. They were playing at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. It was their first year as a team being in Las Vegas. They really played some really good hockey throughout the whole year. They were such a great team. They were like even the best team in the NHL. They were such a great team. I was even going to Vegas twice during the regular season, and I wanted to go see the Golden Knights, but the tickets were so much, even at the top of the stadium in the upper deck, so I didn't have a chance to go see them, but I was watching them on TV. I watched them every time they came here to Denver to play here at the Pepsi Center against the Avalanche. They were such a great team. They did really good with the draft and getting players in free agency. So Vegas Golden Knights, I told many people that they were going to make it into the playoffs and even make it to the Stanley Cup final. I really thought that they were going to win it too, because they were just unbeatable. They were beating really good teams as well. They were such a great team, and they really did have a chance. But at the end of the day, the Washington Capitals were just a better team, and they landed up winning the series 4-1. The Golden Knights played pretty good against all these other teams, but when it came to the Washington Capitals, they kind of struggled a bit. So it was a little bit disappointing. It would have been cool to see the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup final, especially being in Vegas for the first year. They're such a great team. They definitely have the potential of going back to the finals. I would definitely give them a favorite to make it back to the Stanley Cup final next year. There's going to be other really good teams both in the West and the East, but I definitely am rooting for the Vegas Golden Knights to make it back to the playoffs next year. They definitely have the team, and I'm really looking forward to what they can do next year and moving ahead into the future. Moving on now to baseball. I'm going to give you some updates here in baseball right now, but first I'm going to talk about the Colorado Rockies. So last year, they had a really decent team. Even this year and last year and years back, they have a really good starting lineup. They got really good players in the lineup. They got Charlie Blackmon that plays in center field. He's such a good player on the field, in the outfield, at the plate. He's a really nice person off the field too. We got Nolan Arenado. In my opinion, he's the best third baseman in baseball right now. The plays that guy can make at third base is amazing. The throws that he does, he's also very good at the plate hitting wise. I really like Nolan Arenado on the field. He's such a great player. He's won so many awards. In my opinion, he is definitely the best third baseman. And then at shortstop, we got Trevor Story. He's a really good shortstop as well. He makes amazing plays. He's really good at the plate as well. DJ LeMahieu, he doesn't get much credit. He's very underrated. He's the most underrated second baseman in baseball. He's very good at the plate as well, but he's especially good on the field. He can make some amazing throws. The catches he does is amazing. It's sad to know this, but the Colorado Rockies don't get that much recognition because they're not a big market like some of these other teams. Of course, the LA teams, the Chicago teams, the New York teams, and some of these other big markets like Boston, Philadelphia, and some other teams that have big names get more recognition than the Colorado Rockies. But we definitely have some really decent players. If you don't know who Nolan Arenado is, Trevor Story, DJ LeMahieu, or Charlie Blackmon, you really got to watch them. You got to watch a Rockies game. Any game, those four guys are amazing, especially Charlie Blackmon and Nolan Arenado. If you have not seen plays that those guys have done, you definitely got to watch them on YouTube. Look up Nolan Arenado or Charlie Blackmon. They're amazing. They need to get much more recognition. And if you haven't yet, you got to vote these guys into the All-Star game. I know there's many good players throughout baseball, both in the AL and the NL. These guys deserve to be in the All-Star game. You got to vote for them, and you definitely got to watch them in the All-Star game or in the home run derby. They're amazing. These guys deserve to be in the All-Star game, especially other players around baseball. So vote these guys in. There's a lot of big names that you got to vote in, and I know there's guys that will definitely get in, but some of these other guys that are on smaller markets, you definitely got to look and see how they play, because they definitely deserve to be in the All-Star game. They're definitely All-Star worthy, so vote them in, please. Please watch them when the All-Star game comes around, because they're definitely worth being in the All-Star game and watching. So right now I'm going to give you some of the updates in each division, both in the National League and the American League. So let me give you some updates there. So looking at the NL West, right now the Arizona Diamondbacks lead the NL West, but looking at the current standings, it's Arizona, then the Los Angeles Dodgers, then the San Francisco Giants, the Colorado Rockies, and then the San Diego Padres. In my opinion, it's going to be a really tight division, except for the Padres. The other four teams are very good. They all have a potential making it into the playoffs. So after the All-Star break, they're all going to have to play some really good baseball, because when it gets to September, whoever plays the better baseball is going to be the one to make it into the playoffs. Looking at all these teams in the NL right now, even the wild card is going to be very competitive. So there's going to be some teams that look like they should be in the playoffs, but they're going to miss it, because there's going to be some other teams out here, especially for that wild card race, that are just going to play better baseball. And if you go on a losing streak, then you're going to have a hard time getting into the playoffs. It's going to be really hard to get in. It's very competitive in the NL. These division races are very tight in all three divisions, so it's going to have to wait and see what happens here. The Rockies are playing really good baseball, but they've been struggling for like the last month. They have a young starting rotation, and they've been pitching pretty good, but when we get the guys from the bullpen to come into the game, they've just been blowing games. And over the offseason, because the Rockies did make it into the playoffs as a wild card team last year, and they had to play the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they did not land up winning that game. So during the offseason, the Rockies decided that they wanted to make the bullpen a little bit better, so they landed up re-signing Jake McGee. They went out and got Brian Shaw from the Cleveland Indians. They went out and signed a closer, Wade Davis. So they signed all these guys to 3-year contracts. They wanted to make this bullpen a little bit better, because they landed up not bringing back Pat Neshek. He went to the Phillies. They didn't bring back Greg Holland. He had a really good first 3 months, but then when it got to July after the All-Star break, he just started struggling and blowing some games. So they kind of wanted a better closer. So they brought Wade Davis in. They landed up keeping Jake McGee, because he pitched pretty decent these last few years. So they really thought that with the guys they already had and bringing in some big names, they needed some guys in the back end that could come in the 7th inning, the 8th inning. We need a closer, because we have some other relievers that were pretty decent. So they just tried to see what we could do to make this bullpen a little bit better, with the hopes of having even a better season than what we had last year, which so far the Rockies played a lot better baseball up until like the end of June last year. They haven't really been playing that good this year. Last year they were above 500 for almost the first half of the season. Right now we're below 500. We've been losing a lot of games that we shouldn't have been losing. We've been getting swept by division teams here at Coors Field. We've been losing to division teams on the road. Just like last year, the Rockies have been playing better baseball on the road. For some reason, we've just been struggling here at Coors Field. The pitchers have not been pitching that good here at Coors Field. They've been pitching a lot better on the road. So it just seems like the Rockies play better baseball on the road. And then teams that you don't expect the Rockies to beat, and they're really good teams that lead their division, or they could potentially be in that playoff race. They're beating all those teams, but then when it's teams or division teams or bad teams, it's like, okay, this is a winnable game or a must-win game, and they're ending up blowing those games. And just for the last month, especially Brian Shaw, he's been struggling lately. Every time that guy's been coming in, he's been blowing the game. The Rockies have had leads, and they're bringing in Brian Shaw or even other pitchers from the bullpen, and we'll end up losing that game by 8 runs, 10 runs. We've been getting blown out every time that this bullpen's been coming in. Brian Shaw's been a bit of a disappointment lately. I know recently being at these last home games at Coors Field, since I go pretty often, he's been getting booed every time he's coming onto the field, or when he's coming off of the field. He's been letting a lot of runs in. He's been getting the bases loaded. He's let a grand slam. He's letting all these home runs. So it's like, why is Bud Black bringing in Brian Shaw? Why does he keep bringing in Brian Shaw? And I know that Brian Shaw, yes, he's a new reliever. He got a big contract. So it's not a guy that you just want to keep on the bench. But if he's going to be blowing games, why do you keep bringing him in? And even the relievers that we've had on the team for the last few years, they've been struggling lately too. So it's just not been looking too good for the Rockies, especially in the bullpen. The one that's been pitching pretty good is Adam Ottavino. He has a really good ERA. He's not letting a lot of runs in. Out of everybody, I say Adam Ottavino is the best pitcher in the bullpen that we have right now. Wade Davis, he was pitching pretty good for the first 2 months. He had been blowing some saves lately, where we've had very tight games where we're up by 1 or 2 and we'll end up getting the game tied and going to extra innings, or the opposing team scores a few runs and we'll end up losing that game. But he's been pretty solid lately as well. But the best pitcher right now is Adam Ottavino. Our starting lineup's been pretty decent. Charlie Blackmon's been playing good. Nolan Arenado's been a beast at third base and at the plate. This last week, he was NL Player of the Week. He's been playing really good. He's been hitting a lot of home runs, bringing in a lot of runs. He got a lot of RBIs. He's been doing amazing plays at third base like he always does. He had a really good series against the Mets. He carried it on to the Miami Marlins. So that guy is always consistent. It's someone you can rely on. Charlie Blackmon's another guy. Ian Desmond kind of struggled a little bit as well, but he's starting to play a little bit better. So heading into the All-Star break, I hope that the Rockies get their rest, and when they come back from the All-Star break, they're going to have to play a lot better baseball. I hope they play better. It's a team that should make it into the playoffs. I really hope that they don't miss the playoffs, because they had a really good season last year, and I really thought that they'd have a better season this year. So I really hope that they make it into the playoffs, and if they don't, it's going to be a really disappointing season for the Colorado Rockies. So just have to wait and see what happens there. Moving on to the NL Central. Right now we got the Milwaukee Brewers leading, but the Chicago Cubs and St. Louis Cardinals aren't too far. It's going to be a 3-way race between the Brewers, the Cubs, and the Cardinals. Whoever wins the division here, I predict it's going to be the Brewers, but the Cubs and the Cardinals will be fighting for a wild card spot. I don't really see the Pirates or Reds doing anything, especially the Reds, so that's another tight division as well. Moving on to the NL East. This is a very competitive division with the Atlanta Braves, the Phillies, and the Nationals. I really did not expect that the Braves to be leading the division or be playing really good baseball. Last year they weren't playing very good. They landed up not making it into the playoffs. They were always towards the bottom last year, but this year they're leading the division. A lot of people said that the Atlanta Braves had a really good farm system. They have a lot of young players, so looking this year, it's been paying off because they've been playing really good baseball. They've been leading their division. The Phillies and Nationals are not too far back, so that's going to be a three-way race as well. The Mets were playing really good at the beginning of the season, but they kind of like fell apart. The Marlins, they don't really have a good roster, so I don't really expect a lot from them. When the new ownership took over, Derek Jeter seems like he traded away all the good players. I don't know why he did that. I kind of knew that Stanton was going to leave Miami because he wants to go to a better team. I did not see the Marlins winning the World Series, so Stanton wanted to go to a team that he could potentially win the World Series with. He lined up going to the Yankees, but them trading like Christian Yelich, D. Gordon, and some other guys, I was really surprised with that. I just really thought that it was just going to be Stanton, but they landed up getting rid of every good player, so I didn't really expect the Marlins to do anything that great. And looking at the wild card standings, it's going to be very tight in the National League, just like I said. My prediction is the Diamondbacks wins the NL West, the Brewers win the NL Central, and then the Braves probably win the NL East. And looking at the wild card, if you got those three teams winning their division, then you're going to have the Phillies, the Nationals, the Cubs, maybe the Cardinals, the Dodgers, maybe even the Giants. All those teams are going to be fighting for those two wild card spots. So that's going to be very competitive here in the National League. Really looking forward to how these teams are going to play after the All-Star break. So I'll just wait and see what happens there. And now looking at the American League, I'll start with the AL West. Houston's leading their division. Of course, they're a favorite to make it back to the playoffs, even go to the World Series. I could see the Astros even winning the World Series again. They have pretty much the same roster. They made some additions over the offseason of getting Garrett Cole. Their starting rotation's great. They got Cole, they got Dallas, they got Verlander. They got a really good lineup. That team's very talented. They're playing really good baseball right now. Seattle's not too far back. They've been having some winning streaks. They had some really good additions that they added to their roster over the offseason. They got D. Gordon. Their team's pretty solid. It's too bad that Robinson Cano got suspended for that many games, but when he comes back, they should be a pretty decent team. Even without Robinson Cano, they're playing really good baseball. They got a good lineup. They got a good rotation. So there's a lot of potential there. The A's, I don't really expect too much from them. The A's, the Oakland A's, so the Athletics, the Angels, and the Rangers, I don't really expect a lot from them. So it's just, this division is probably going to be just between the Astros and the Mariners. The Angels were also up there competing for the division in April and May, but of course, it's too bad that they lost Shohei Ohtani. He was such a special player. He could have like almost picked any big market team, but he picked the Angels. What he was able to do was amazing. I remember going and seeing Ohtani here at Coors Field when the Angels were here back in May. I was really excited to see Ohtani and Trout. During batting practice, Ohtani was just hitting baseballs all over. He was even hitting baseballs up to the third deck of Coors Field. He really has the power of hitting. He's really good as a pitcher. He did not pitch when they were here at Coors Field. He pitched the Sunday game when they were at Seattle playing the Mariners. So it would have been nice to see Ohtani pitch here at Coors Field. I think he did not pitch here because of the altitude. It's the first time the Angels came here with Ohtani. The Angels don't come here that often because they're an American League team. So he did not pitch, but he did land up coming in and pinch hitting. He did not really do any hits. He got walked and struck out, but it was nice to see Ohtani come up to the plate. the crowd cheered when we saw Ohtani come up to the plate. So it was cool to see him those 2 days. I wish I could have seen the guy pitch or even be in the starting lineup, but it was nice to see Ohtani. I've been watching Ohtani throughout spring training and throughout the regular season until he got injured. And it was amazing how Ohtani could pitch and be in the starting rotation, and how he could also be a hitter and bat at the plate. He was really good at pitching or hitting. You could have Ohtani do one or the other or both, and he was really great. It's too bad that Ohtani got injured and he's going to be sitting out for as long as he is. I really hope that he recovers and comes back even better. He might just only be a hitter when he comes back. I don't know if he'll pitch. There's been rumors about that, but they really hope that Ohtani can come back sooner. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Moving on to the AL Central, the Cleveland Indians are leading this division. I kind of see the Indians going back to the playoffs. They got a really talented roster. They got a good starting rotation and lineup. Their bullpen's great. So the Indians, they're going to win that division. The Twins, the Tigers, the White Sox, and the Royals, they're pretty far back. So it looks like it's just going to be the Indians in the AL Central. The AL East, between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees, that's going to be a very competitive race. They're only like a half a game apart from each other. They have not been apart from each other by that many games, so that's going to be very competitive. The Rays, the Blue Jays, and Baltimore, there's not really a chance that they're going to make it into the playoffs. They look like they're just going to stay pretty far back. Baltimore looks like they're going to probably make some moves at the deadline. Manny Machado's a rumor that he could be on the move to different teams. I could see that happening because Baltimore is 30 games back, so it's not like they're going to like go on a winning streak and win the rest of the games, or go on a winning streak where they're going to win every single game for the next month. So they're going to make some moves at the deadline. They're going to be a team that sells. They're not going to really be a buyer. So looking at the Red Sox and the Yankees, that's going to be very competitive. Both teams are very talented with their starting rotation, with their lineup, with their bullpen. So just have to wait and see what happens there. My predictions for the American League is that Houston wins the AL West. Seattle's right there as well. The AL Central is going to be the Cleveland Indians. The AL East could be the Red Sox or the Yankees. That's going to be very competitive. So looking at all these teams, when it comes to September, whoever plays better baseball is going to be the team that wins and makes it into the playoffs. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens there. The wild card could have some potential teams like the Mariners if they don't win the division. And then in the AL East, it could be either the Red Sox or the Yankees. It's just going to depend who plays better baseball. It's going to depend who wins their division. It's going to depend who's going to be in that wild card race. Looking at the standings, the wild card race looks like it's going to be between the Red Sox, Yankees, and Mariners, or whoever does not win their division. So just have to wait and see what happens there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the AL as well. Of course, the National League is going to be more competitive. That's the one I'm looking forward to seeing throughout the remainder of the season. But there's definitely a race here in the AL East like there always is every year. So I'm really looking forward to what happens in baseball for the remainder of the season. And then moving ahead to next week, I will get into NBA free agency. That starts on July 1st. There's a lot of potential trades and free agents that could be on the move, so I'm really looking forward to what happens there. I will talk about the NBA draft. I'll maybe get into the NFL a little bit. I might wait on that because right now we're in the break between mini camp and training camp, but I'll definitely get into the NFL as that gets closer. I'll get into some good picks that these NBA teams got in the NBA draft, some players that they got that could potentially be a franchise player and make their team better. But the NBA free agency is definitely going to be interesting to watch and see what happens there. I'll get into that next week, and then I'll give you another update of baseball and tell you who's leading their division, and just give you my opinion about other teams. I'll do that for the remainder of the season until the baseball season ends. So I hope you enjoyed this first show of All Sports with Gerardo. I hope you tune in to many other shows of All Sports with Gerardo. Throughout this journey, I will do shows in the studio. I will do shows outside of the studio. I'll be live at different locations throughout Colorado, throughout the US. I'll show you stadiums. I will be live at different places so you can see what that place looks like and just change it up a bit. And I hope that you have the opportunity to watch these videos, and if you have not been to stadiums that I show or tell you about, I really hope that you have the opportunity to go out to those stadiums. Any stadium I talk about, whether they're the best or the worst or they're in the middle, they're definitely worth going and seeing. Every stadium's different. There's something unique about them, especially all the baseball stadiums. If there's one thing that I can recommend to you, you gotta go visit every single baseball stadium. Each stadium is so unique in their own ways. They're special. I definitely have my favorite stadiums. I got stadiums I'd go back to. I definitely love Coors Field because I live here in Denver, so I go there all the time. That's one of my favorite stadiums. But I definitely like other stadiums because of their layout or their background or the view that they have from being in the upper deck. They have such amazing views of the city or whatever. So if there's something I can recommend to you, you got to visit those stadiums throughout some time in your life. You definitely will not regret that. So definitely do that whenever you have an opportunity, because not too many people can say that they've been to all 30 baseball stadiums. I'm almost there, so I'll be the next person to say that I've been to all 30 stadiums. So it's something I'm really looking forward to sharing with you guys about my experience at every stadium, so stay tuned for that. Once again, I really do hope that you enjoyed this inaugural show of All Sports with Gerardo. I hope that you tune in to many more shows. I will be doing a show every week, so if you can't watch it when you're live, you can always tune in or watch it online. I post all of my content on my social media pages. Check out my YouTube page, my Facebook page, my SoundCloud page. I post everything on there, so if you can't watch it when you're live, you definitely will not miss out. Just got to go onto my social media or my pages online and just view my videos there. All my content's there. And definitely, if you have not viewed my introduction videos or my background video, please watch it. You'll get to know who I am as a person and what I like. So definitely watch those whenever you have a chance. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, there's many more to come from the studio and from different locations throughout the US. So please stay tuned in. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in to All Sports with Gerardo. There's many more to come. And until next time, this is Gerardo. Thank you for watching.